This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast brought to you by the Genesis Company. Coming at you Friday morning. It's November 10th. And on today's show, we got Wolves beat writer Jace Frederick from the Pioneer Press. We did a Kyle Jace trade this week, I think, in the schedule.
Because I needed time to process the Jordan McLaughlin news.
That's what it was. You were in mourning.
Yes.
You were in mourning.
Yes.
So Wolves play the Spurs tonight. So the plan for this episode today, we'll go a little bit less so game recappy and more so bigger picture. We're going to do that by we each made a list of 3 things we were wrong about with this team, or at least have been wrong thus far about. And I think it's interesting because I feel like this isn't one of my 3 things, but I think making my list, what I was most wrong about was the vibe of the team and the sort of confidence. And I think that's really mattered. And what that probably means is I underrated continuity the most. When everyone was peddling, oh, run it back, continuity to me in the summer, I was privately sort of rolling my eyes. But I think there is probably proving to be a value of that. And that's probably a big reason for why, at least I think defensively, they've been able to kind of click in. Would you agree with that?
You started, so we're doing 3 things, and you decided to start with something that wasn't on your list that was your biggest one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I literally just came up with it 6 minutes ago. So.
There you go. Right. I do agree with it. And I think defensively is a big thing, and I've got, a couple of defensive things on my list. But even I think it even shows up at various points offensively too, even though there have been struggles. You see little signs of okay, I don't know if that would have happened last year. It is kind of teams need time to grow together. Guys need time to mature at younger players. I think a year ago, I kind of looked at this team, especially in the latter portion of the year, even in the regular season, even after Mike Conley got here, there were still nights where you're what are they doing? How did they allow that to happen defensively? How did they fall apart offensively? And I would sit there and be they have Mike Conley, Kyle Anderson, and Rudy Gobert. They shouldn't be making these types of mistakes as a team. But you see now, as they've had Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, everybody has had time around those guys, and even some off-season time or whatever. With them. Yeah, it started to seep in. And I think the coaching staff's constant hammering in ideas with the support of these veteran players being yep, that's what we have to do if we want to win. It's caught on. And I think it is kind of I underrated that it can take more than a year for that to happen.
Yeah. Right.
I'm just look, if it hasn't happened, you watch the whole course of a year and things don't change. What do you expect to change? But we've seen in other areas too, other teams year 2, year 3 of whatever they have, you see things really start to take hold, and that's happened here, and that makes, at least so far, it's happened here, and that makes sense, I guess, when you have 22-year-old, 23-year-old, even Nasri 24, or 25. These are all big pieces of your rotation. So yeah,
more incubation time with the young guys around the Anderson, Conley, Gobert, mature guys. That's probably what the value of continuity was.
Yes, you almost expect it to happen immediately because those guys show up, and it's how long can this possibly take? Just do what they do or whatever.
Right.
They'll set the tone. They can be setting a tone, but that tone takes some time to take hold, to kind of uproot maybe bad habits, bad approaches, just not understanding what it is required. So yeah, I think I underestimated all of that.
And it seems like a sustainable thing, right? We're not going to,
yeah.
You don't think though, 3 weeks from now, we're going to be man, that sounded stupid what we were talking and writing about, right?
The only reason why I think in general, when I think there will be times this year where we're question maturity and stuff, because as the season plays out, and I'm just saying it now to be a kind of guard against it later. There will be a time this year where I talk about maturity or something, or want to defensively, because every team goes through stretches during the season where they played terrible defense.
Denver did. Denver did last year, the whole end of the season.
Yes. And I will certainly say things about the bad defense, and every team does it. So I think point. There will be times where that happens, and it doesn't mean that they're immature or something, because like you said, even Denver took the last month of the regular season off. So and it didn't matter. So if that happens in mid-January or something, I will grill it then. But I'm acknowledging now that when it does happen, inevitably that happens.
Right. All right. In no particular, or mine are in no particular order. I don't even know what order I'm going to go in here. Give me one of your 3 things that you were wrong about with this.
Yeah, I'll put it out there just in case you used it, so that I can
Just
get it
steal
out
it.
first. That Rudy Gobert's best basketball wasn't behind him. I definitely kind of started to feel that way last year. Like we knew he wasn't 100% healthy. We knew it was a big thing, like coming off of FIBA last year. We knew all these things, and obviously he's adjusting to new players and whatnot. But I couldn't get it out of my head of like, well, he is, in his 30s, and like sometimes big men don't they lose that athleticism and whatnot, and they just can't
Like the
quite be the
DeAndre
same
Jordan,
player.
right?
Yes, DeAndre Jordan, we would mention that, like we would talk
Mhm.
about it. Like he was a guy who was basically built on his athleticism, and as that kind of started to wane, he became a significantly less valuable player. Now, Rudy's
Mhm.
always been a better player than DeAndre Jordan.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
I understand that. But it's like, well, if he loses a little bit of edge athletically, he can't be as high of an impact player. And I thought maybe we've hit that. Maybe the Wolves
Right.
did acquire him at the worst time where his value was highest, but what you were getting immediately after that was not as good. That was clearly wrong. Like Rudy Gobert looks like he's in great form, great shape,
Yeah.
everything. Like he looks like Rudy Gobert, the one in
Mhm.
Utah. He looks like the player where, when all the Utah reporters are like, no, you don't understand. Like the
Yeah.
value he is bringing on a nightly basis is remarkable. We see it every night. Now I'm feeling that way, watching him
Mhm.
every night, just the way he is able to move around, alter shots, like even offensively, the way he screens, the way he's like a lead blocker half the time. It's all things that he's bringing on a nightly basis. He looks physically dominant. I didn't know if we'd see that again,
Mhm.
at least here through 7 games. He looks like that player.
Yeah, and then when you weave that together with maybe he's the one benefiting most from that continuity vibe thing that I
Right.
think we're talking about, or he seems to be like the emblem
Yeah.
of it more than anyone else has. I did not do anything, Rudy, because
Okay, cool.
I thought you would. I guess this one is my closest related to that. And it's that transition defense and defensive rebounding have not been an issue thus far. And they're ninth lowest in transition frequency against them. After obviously it was a disaster when Kat and Rudy were on the floor together a year ago. It was the first 3 games were pretty bad. These last 4 have been really good. Really haven't let teams get out against them in transition. I thought that would be almost a nightly occurrence, at least for a spurt, and it hasn't been. I think why I was wrong about that is I forgot or didn't realize that last year's team only really got cooked in transition when it was Cat and Rudy. Like overall last year, if you look at the Wolves transition numbers, like they didn't let teams get out in transition against them that much. It was like 12th lowest. It was terrible when it was Cat and Rudy, but it just was whatever that number is. It was like 600 minutes or something that they were on the floor. The rest of the time, it was good. Like Cat and no Rudy, rarely teams got out in transition, like the equivalent of the second lowest team in the league. Rudy, no Cat, same thing. Like it was only an issue, and I guess only has really been an issue this season when it's the both of them out there together. So that maybe acknowledging that that is really the only place that they can get hurt with it. Maybe that's where I'm shifting in my mind to believing that, because I kind of thought like, oh, Nas and like they commit a bunch of turnovers and Kyle Slow, whatever, that it would be a more invasive issue for this team than it probably is. And there's going to still be times where they get hurt in transition this year too. But I think I was wrong about that.
Yeah, and frankly, I don't know. Does it feel to you like, and maybe we'll see it now with like a younger team like the Spurs, but I don't feel like teams have really been targeting it either. Like
I think that's
early
a
in,
bad idea that they haven't, but I agree. Yeah.
yeah, I don't feel like because they're especially early last year, and maybe it's because it was like bad teams where it was like, well, this
Mhm,
is the only way we can beat them, and that's why I'm interested to see like the Spurs game. But
mhm.
even on makes, get it out, push,
Yeah.
run back, and just apply pressure every single possession to see if you can find cracks in it. I haven't
Mhm.
seen teams do that. I don't expect to see like a Denver do that or a Boston do that
Sure.
because they have generally like if there's an easy opportunity, yep, they'll take it.
Mhm,
But they have so much belief in who they are as a team and like their half court offense and what they can do that they're not going to be like, we do this to this team on this night because that's what
mhm.
they're bad at. It's kind of a more trust yourself thing. I'm like, I was a little surprised, maybe even like the Pelicans, but you only have Valanciunas and Ingram. Like,
Yeah.
you're probably not going to be that fast. So, like, I
Mhm.
think it's against like the bad teams that I'm going to look more for it.
Tonight.
Like, yes, exactly. That's 100%. Like, I would not be surprised at all if the Spurs especially when like a Trey Jones is out there. Inbound, go. Even off makes, misses, go. And you just run up to like half court and you see if there's something there. And if it's not, you pull back. But every single possession, you apply pressure. Those are the opponents. I want to see somebody do that and see how Minnesota does it. Like,
right.
I do think Minnesota's been very good, intentional about like, oh, okay, long rebound here. Like guys are trying to get back. Okay, turnover. Like they're like, oh, here's an opportunity. I want to see if somebody applies it every single possession, what they do. But in general, even like the times where you're like, that could lead to a transition opportunity. I think Minnesota's done a very good job. Guys have been very intentional about getting back. Like Rudy Gobert has been chief among those, I think, guys who've just been really making an effort to get back.
Is it interesting because they've been doing the like get back on defense and guard a man, not your man, which is like a good first step to like get back.
Right.
But
they've had some weird cross matches, but they do they've been pretty smart. Like it's usually like Conley or Anderson who's down low in there. I'm just gonna foul.
Yeah, right. That's true.
Which is a great way to stop it.
It really is often Mike getting back and like holding the big for a second.
Because that's not a transition take foul. Like it's because the transition's kind of over, but you're in a half like in a not half court, but you're
just
in
getting
there,
give him a little push, let him elbow
grab,
you and push him back.
Whatever. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Mismatch.
Sideline out of bounds. Yeah.
Yeah. It's they've done a good job of that. And like you said, like getting back and matching up. I think they've been more organized this year. Finch said that. Corliss Williamson's kind of been in charge of that. I think they have been more organized. But it's still a work in progress. But 10 times better than how it felt at points last year.
Yeah, I don't think I've mentioned this, but I think that was an interesting thing that like Finch shared, that Corliss Williamson, who's a new assistant coach this year for the Wolves, his like where Kevin Hansen is offensive coordinator, right, and Elston Turner's defensive coordinator. Corliss Williamson is like special teams, but specifically focused on transition and defense, or transition and rebounding. Which obviously huge area of weakness. But I also noticed just like in pregame shoot, like he works with Cat. Like Cat has worked with Kevin Hansen as his like one-on-one guy the whole time. I feel like, I'm just connecting some dots here, but like I feel like Corliss Williamson was brought in for Cat because the transition defense, again, that stuff and rebounding was an issue when Carl was on the floor. And like Kevin Hansen was like the Anthony Davis, like the centers. He's worked with the centers, and now Cat is less so that, and he's working with Corliss Williamson, and I'm just like, okay, like I don't really have like a take on that, but it is a change, and I think it is just in general, I think seems like a smart thing the way that Finch has broken up the coaching staff into like hyper specific things. What do you think of when he brought that up the other day? Or were you there? Was that
yeah, just the transition thing, like when he did that.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was interesting in general, and I generally like a coach who shouts out their assistant coaches, because like I think that is important to like, hey, here's this person's role, here's what they're bringing on a nightly basis, because like if assistant coaches aren't really getting acknowledged or credited, then it is harder for them to gain notoriety and whatnot. And like I'm sure they appreciate it when their efforts are highlighted in a public setting, so they get some credit. So often it's almost like faceless, assistant coaches. And
it's like we don't even know. Like
right.
I don't
know what their responsibilities are, but so many people don't even know their names. Like and so it's nice, I think, when like they just get credit, acknowledgement, those types of things.
For sure.
And maybe Finch is thinking like, so if this goes off the wire, we'll just be like, that was Corliss.
That was Corliss.
No. Totally kidding, but yeah, it's cool. And I actually think it's a good point on your part that like maybe it was brought in for Cat, because I can't think of anybody who that position wasn't like one that needed to be filled.
Yeah.
It was just an additional coach. I can't think of anybody else. So like,
I know who left.
Nobody. So I think that very well might have been like we need somebody who gets more time with Cat to really kind of help him find his way in what we're doing.
And somebody whose nickname when he played was Big Nasty.
Yeah.
Give that to Carl.
Yeah.
All right. Give me another one of yours.
Yeah. So this works out well. You're like, it could be positive or negative. I'll throw one negative thing in there. I guess I wouldn't have thought, not like I put too much thought into this in the preseason, but I never would have thought that Carl would struggle so much in like one-on-one situations. And that oftentimes this year has meant like post-ups, but even top of the floor. Like it used to be Carl, if you are not helping insignificantly, if you are not doubling him in the post, it is an automatic bucket. Had you told me that teams were going to shift their defensive focus and leave Carl in more one-on-one situations to account for others elsewhere, I would have said Carl would be off to an incredible offensive start to the year. he certainly has not been. I could not have envisioned this, that there would be such struggles posting up smaller guys. Even like it's not even doubles, it's like delayed help. And he's not capitalizing, he's not going quick enough.
He's not going quick enough. That's the thing.
It's a huge thing. And I think his mind has been totally messed with seeing so many doubles over the years and anticipating a double and thinking it's coming and wondering where is it coming from. It's not coming. And he hasn't really adjusted to that.
It was such a good question when you asked Finch that, like, does Carl need to readjust to single coverage? And Finch was kind of like, yeah, I think so. Like, and I think you're right. Like, I think that's what's happening. Like, if we just watch it, we know the history of him getting crazy doubled all the time.
Like the ball is midair. Like the pass would be midair to him, and the second defender would be there. Like, and it's gone. I mean, it's not happening anymore. And I understand teams doing that to some degree, but and top of the floor, like, it's not as significant of like a nail help and stuff. So often it is like the person up top is being left to guard Cat, and he just hasn't taken advantage. And I maybe we'll see him adjust. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him adjust and kind of find his way, because Carl's talented enough offensively. He should absolutely dominate one-on-one coverage against defenders who seemingly, don't have the abilities to match up with him. The only thing right now, like basically what I think you and I both think he should rely on right now is just his outside shooting and having a quick trigger out there, because everything else is just not working. And that has been really surprising to me. I wouldn't have said it was a big surprise that Cat maybe would struggle offensively, but given the coverages we've seen, that's been a big surprise for me.
Yeah, you say that's a negative thing too, but it's like that's actually an indicator that, I don't think he's going to continue to struggle in one-on-one isolation situations as much as he has already this year. So it's, again, kind of a reason to point to more ceiling, right? Sure. I mean, that's just where I'm at with Carl overall. It's like, nobody needs me to come on here and say it, or you to write that Carl's struggled. Like, you look at the box score. It's
very obvious.
It's very, very obvious. The question is, how much higher is he going to get? And as much higher as he can get in his individual performance, like, has a really big impact, I think, on the ceiling of this team. Can he do those things? Can he foul less? Can he whatever? Like, that's going to be, a big thing. This is probably a good time to do I didn't play this yesterday after the game, but I thought it was interesting and worthwhile. We should just play it, the Finch on Cat offensive fouls thing. Because that was a good question by Chris, and I think it's this is a worthwhile thing to track, particularly when Cat's being guarded by smalls, like you said. So here's Finch on Cat's offensive fouls.
Was it kind of your intention tonight to get Carl going early after the night he had? Was that kind of the plan coming in?
Yeah, I did, and it resulted in a couple offensive fouls right out of the gate. So he decided to move himself behind the three-point line and got himself going. So,
speaking of those offensive fouls, the hook on the drives has become a thing over the last couple of games here. How do you communicate that to him, that this is maybe something he needs to correct?
I mean, listen, they're fouls. You can't offensively advantage yourself by a hook. But what I'm curious to see, and when I look at all these things, is like, what is the level of contact on the drive before the hook? I think that's something that we have to, fight for him for, because if that's a guard driving, a lot of times that type of contact is called a foul. But if it's a big driving, a lot of times they allow a lot more contact to go. So, but yeah, I mean, certainly they're oftentimes fouls and unnecessary, but there is a lot of contact leading up to them. So
I think that, like, when I'm picturing him talking about that contact before, it's when he's guarded by a small. I think that makes the ref less like, and agree 100% with Finch. Like, they are fouls. He is hooking them. All that. There is some of that contact. I don't think that's Finch talking out of his ass. Like, and I think whatever that contact is less likely to be called against the defense when the defender is 6'3" Jrue Holiday versus, if he's guarded by 6'10" Jeremy Sohan tonight. Like, I think there's a weird size discrepancy thing there too that impacts the referees and what they're calling there.
It's like I could see it on the last 2-minute report, and I can't think of what the word is. in my head, it's like the word is negligible, but it's not that. But like on the 2-minute report, it would read like there is blank contact. That would be like it doesn't really matter. Like not enough to warrant.
On
And
the defender.
yes, yeah.
Mhm.
And even like Carl, like when there was one hook on a drive, and we do see him do that pretty much every play. So I do kind of wonder if there isn't almost like a little bit of a book out on him, like
Yeah.
like
Let him hook.
like an actual data point,
Yeah.
like of like the refs being like, hey, with Towns, you see like on his drives, he kind of hooks the arm a lot,
Mhm.
because and after every bucket or whatever, even when he just scores, the defender is like looking at the ref going like this, like he's
Yeah.
arm. So when
Yeah.
you're seeing that every single play, every time down the court, it's probably going to sink into your head eventually. And one of those, like in the Pelicans game, was like a post up where he was trying to get position and he
Yeah.
did it.
Mhm.
So I agree that there is some contact there, but like ahead of time. And sometimes that gets called. It's not like it never gets called. He
True.
definitely gets some, like he takes one dribble and there's a whistle because,
Mhm.
there's like two hands put on him or something.
Totally. That's a good point.
But at the same time, it's like the things Finch is talking about there were like, oh, if that was a guard, that would be called. Like, this is what big men have been fighting against
Forever.
for all of basketball.
Yeah.
Like do you think Shaq had any like issues with this? Like getting basically hung on all the time. Like
Right.
you got to find ways around it. Like I'm sorry, yes, it's unfair. Sure, that's the history of basketball. Smalls get away with more on bigs.
Yeah.
You got to find ways around it. So that's kind of the way I feel. And but I totally understand Finch like going to bat to some degree. First admitting that Carl can't do that, but then also kind of going to bat for his player. I think that's a very good response for a coach to question like that. But I think the reality is like Carl's got to work around it.
Yeah, and I think that is what Finch is saying is the primary thing. He said multiple times, those are fouls.
Yes.
And they are. And I think what Finch's job is to internalize that first sentence. Those are fouls, Carl. If we start there, let's not start by thinking about the contact, which is negligible or whatever it is.
I wish I could find the word. I know what it is. And if I could look at a 2-minute report right now and I would find what the word is that they say. But you know what? I think the Wolves, I'm surprised they don't do this more often. Maybe they do. Not that they have that much time for practice during the NBA season, so that's an issue. But like when you're running your offensive sets or something and the second unit's on, like put Nikhil on Carl. Nikhil should always be on Carl.
That's an interesting
second unit stuff. He's super physical.
Right.
He's about that size. Whether it's in the post up top, Nikhil should always be on Carl. And I understand maybe that wouldn't give Ant the best look or whatever.
I love that idea.
Ant doesn't need that many looks. Like Ant's doing just fine. Anybody can guard him and he can simulate it. Like I think Nikhil would be a great super physical, handsy defender. Like to give Carl the problems and then never give Carl a call in practice and just be like, figure it out.
Yeah. I like that. So, Jace, my second thing that I was wrong about is I thought this team would hurt for 3-point shooting more than it has. And it's not to say that they've been like a high volume or highly effective 3-point shooting team thus far. I haven't like left games being like this team didn't have enough shooting. That's why the offense stalled out, or that's why they lost the game. And entering the season, I kind of had some questions about what Nickeil Alexander-Walker would be as a shooter off the bench. He's kind of taken that TP role. You lose TP, who I think was one of the most important shooters on the team last season. So this might be a for now thing. Like the 3-point shooting might hurt them down the line. But I haven't. I think I've been wrong that I haven't really felt like the shooting has killed them thus far.
I do think we've seen like some hot starts from some guys from deep, and other guys have been colder. For me, I always just kind of go back now to like 20, what was that, 17, 18, where they had like without any shooting, they had like the 5th best offense.
The Jimmy year.
Yeah, the Jimmy year. Like, and I know that's because they lived like in the paint and at the free throw line, but like that did kind of open my eyes to like,
you can have good offense without it.
Yeah. And obviously like their offense hasn't been like incredible. There's a lot of room for improvement there. And you do wonder what the ceiling is without having more shooters, particularly off the bench, just to provide that consistency. But like, I feel like there's enough to have a good offense. And it is just like the different ways in which you can generate it. And maybe this team is just more meant to generate offense, like inside the arc, at the line, those types of things. It does take like, I think some good coaching and whatnot and smart players to figure that out, but I think they have enough of that.
I saw Jake Painting tweet this out this morning, the Wolves catch and shoot 3-point numbers by player this year. And these kind of surprised me at how good some of them have been. Nas 13 of 30, 43%.
Nas has been far more of a stand in the corner, catch and shoot player, especially lately, than I would have expected. And I think maybe even than you'd like to see. But there's been a lot of just stand, catch and shoot, him and his role in the offense. I actually don't think these last few games he's been like enough of a part of, maybe like aggressive enough himself. I think he's really kind of just settled for standing in the corner, and it's worked because he's shooting the ball well. But that's one thing I've noticed.
I feel like he was doing that, like almost settling for that, or it felt like in the Pelicans game, he's kind of settling for him a little bit more. And maybe because he'd been making so many of them, it felt like such a weapon in his game the first 6 games of the season. But I guess overall, just on paper, take 43% on catch and shoot threes from Naz Reid. Cat 33%, 12 of 36 on catch and shoots. Mike Conley 10 of 16. And like, that doesn't seem crazy to me. Like, I think Mike Conley's like end of season catch and shoot number might be like 50%.
Yeah, I was gonna say 45. Yeah.
Like, it's just there when he's taken, though, there's so many of them are just really clean. Like that one hit ahead pass from Ant in the Boston game. Like Mike knows when he has one of them. Like he can't look for his offense that much in the offense, but he's like, that is one whenever I can get it, a good catch and shoot. A catch and shoot three. I'm not going to hesitate on that. I think that's been big. McDaniels 47% on catch and shoot. Nikhil 31% on catch and shoot. I just think he's just that's the Nikhil Alexander-Walker shooting thing is going to be a journey. It is just going to be up and down over like multiple week stretches. And I literally think that's just a product of funky mechanics, that when it's working, it's working. And when it's broken until it gets fixed again. That I think that's just going to be the Na shooting experience overall. And has only taken 12 catch and shoot threes. That's crazy because how many has he taken? Like 50? 50 total threes. Only 4 of 12 on catch and shoot threes from Ant. That's interesting. Shake Milton 4 of 14 on catch and shoots, which is 29%. And Kyle Anderson 2 of 5.
Kyle's number is just low. I just feel like he's taken more than that. But so many times, like he'll even do like a one dribble.
Probably don't. Yeah, when he does this little like it's almost like a free throw routine sort of thing. It's like dribble, come up into it, click, click, click. And I also thought that kind of with the 3-point shoot. That was one of my reasons for skepticism on the 3-point shooting. I'm like, okay, Kyle Anderson shot 40% from 3 last year, but like, are we really banking on that? Happening again this season? I was like, I don't know. Like,
I can't believe you don't trust the click, click, boom motion. It is like, it's funny, like somebody who like sitting in like my media row, like somebody who's maybe not there a lot, and then like it goes in and they like look over and it's like, yeah, it goes in a lot. I don't get it either. Nobody gets it. Like it.
He was we're there like before the game watching him shoot. I'm like sitting in the courtside spot. I'm right by the corner and he's right in front of me. And I just started taking a video of it and sent it to my friends because you're right there, like 2 feet behind him. You're like, and of course he makes like all 6 of the ones while I was filming there, but I sent it to my friends and I'm just like, this is such, it will never not be one of the most wild shot mechanics I've seen. Anyways, just
I want to get to like the catch and shoot numbers. Like you put it at Conley's being so high and you think it'll be so high. Like we've said this a million times, like when you see players shoot in practice and whatnot, like it's lights out. I think one of the reasons why Conley's is so high is that there's no indecision. There's no like second guessing. There's no, should I take this? It's like, like as like the ball is coming, he's like, yep, I'm taking this one. And it just becomes like the most natural, confident stroke that you'll see. And those are more likely to go in.
Yeah, no, such a weapon. Like such a weapon for this team, because I think eventually over the course of the year, like what teams are going to need to choose of the starters who to ignore more. Like some teams are going to come to the conclusion of like, if like Cat gets rolling a little more and whatever, like Mike might be a guy that they ignore. And we know the 3-point shot is there. And then the floater game is there too with Rudy. Like if you needed to up Mike's usage like they did last season, I think we can confidently say like his effectiveness and productiveness wouldn't take a hit in that time because he's still just a hell of an offensive player.
I mean, if teams did that, they would be forcing Minnesota into its most consistent, reliable offense. I mean, that is what they would be doing. Like,
that's true.
I don't know, like it won't be like as electric as like Ant spurts and whatnot, but like
Right.
it's going to be good offense and get good shots. That is what teams would be forcing Minnesota into.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So maybe they won't.
yeah. I don't know. But you might be right. At some point, you're just like, well, we
One
can't
game.
do this, can't do this. Like some NBA coach is going to come to that conclusion.
That's
like,
true.
There's no way around it.
All right, give me your third one.
This is just kind of my big picture one, and I know we're only through 7 games. Like, Minnesota's defense, maybe it won't carry on, but like through 7 games, I was wrong over the past few years, I guess, that there is any way to construct a roster where a defense that has Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards on the court can be consistently good. And I know people will be like, Ant's a good defender. No, Ant's a good one-on-one isolation defender. And it's where he gets so much attention for defenses. Like, his defense is like the highlight plays, like running back in transition and blocking a shot, or like the Jason Tatum thing, like forcing a turnover, forcing a jump ball. Like, if you just put him in a thing where it's like, can you be more athletic than this guy, or can you lock in and stay right in front of this guy? Ant is a really good defender. And like, when you have a star player, star scorer, that is enough a lot of times to be like, wow, that's amazing, because so many guys can't even do that. But just in terms of like team defense, like navigating actions, playing pick and roll defense, like just being conscious of where your guy is off the ball, it's not always great. So when you pair that with Cat, who's always been kind of a defensive liability himself, I just thought that's 2 guys where there's 2 question marks out there. I don't think you can be like elite when you have those 2 guys in the court. So far, so good. Carl's putting in the effort on that end. Ant has been locked in enough. There's certainly some plays where like we look at each other and it's like, he got way lost there. Literally like gave up a 3-point out of a timeout
because he was tying his shoe.
And I know that happens, but like it only happens. It's gonna happen more often to Ant than somebody else.
That was a bad idea.
But
there have been a few though. There have been a few. We share a mind on like that whole Ant thing. That I really believe the truth is Ant is a very good on-ball defender, and overall that he's not. He's mediocre or something like that, and it's because of the off-ball stuff. I will say, just like maybe less so live when I'm watching the game, but if I go back to watch clips or rewatch games, I am noticing more smart Ant things off ball. Like there's at least occasions of them when he's coming into a tag effectively, or you can just tell that he's had to run a lot of drills where he is off ball, he's the low man, he's whatever, and he's starting to pick up on some of that patterning, right? And I think that's probably a contribution that's to your point right there too. And then I think with Cat, like I think he showed well in pick and roll coverage. And then really the thing from him where I think he's contributing to the defense is he's rebounding.
Yes,
like,
he is. Yep.
And
you remember early last year, his rebounding numbers stunk. And we were
really
just like, well, that's Rudy's there. It's like, no, you have to be part of it too. And he would even say that, through like the 5-10 game mark or whatever, and they didn't improve a ton. Now he is very actively a part of what they're doing on the glass.
Yeah. And like, there's just some big in the Boston games, there was some big, like ending the possession rebounds, not Carl. When Carl was averaging like 25 and 12, right? It was his 12 rebound years. It was because he played drop and he was around the basket.
Right.
Like Carl was an elite rebounder within his zone. And that was always part of my skepticism about Carl moving to the fours. It's like you're rebounding from a different place on the floor. It's a lot more of a crash than like a seal and box out and just go grab the board. I think he's getting better at that. And that's probably right. Like when this team was awful at defense 3 years ago, it was because Ant was consistently lost off ball and because they were not a good rebounding team. And I think both of those guys contributed to that then, and they're at least contributing in some way more. They're contributing more positively now to team defense. And I mean, I agree. I wouldn't have thought that this could be an elite defensive team. We're like, they could be 10th, right. But now we're like, they could be top 3. They might be 1,
Yes, Right. Very, very, very easily could be that. And I never would have thought that possible. And like Ant has even done much better on the longer rebounds this year and whatnot. Like I think he's seeing like, oh, that turns into transition if I get these, like there's positive input on the other end as well. And Carl, like and the off ball stuff, I 100% agree with you. In key points, he's really locking in on that more. There might be some lapses, but it is like middle of second quarter.
I was going to say
one play. They still stand out to us because we're constantly looking for it. But there are much bigger stretches where he is doing his job there versus other times where it's like he's not paying attention to any possession ever.
Absolutely. My one thing we were wrong about that is negative, I guess, is I I got to the point through training camp where I shifted my mind that the lack of depth at point guard wasn't going to be a big deal. I kind of was like, they'll cobble it together effectively. Kyle Anderson can do it some. Nikhil can play some point guard, and then we heard so much about Shake Milton being able to do that, and I do think thus far that's been wrong because I do think backup point guard has been somewhat of an issue and is now with Jordan McLaughlin, like that was your kind of break glass in case of emergency to slow things down or to pick up the pace, like whatever, do the point guardy things. I do think backup point guard is becoming or has been somewhat of a problem for this team.
I agree with you. I just think it's kind of league wide, right? Like, not how many teams right now have like
That's
2 point guards?
I don't think
like
that way. Yeah,
teams just don't even play it. Like, and I'm talking about this in my piece that's going to come out online today and like Sunday with Mike Conley. Is like point guard just it's not really there. Like, think of who teams are starting at point guard right now from against Minnesota. Like Boston doesn't start. Drew Holiday is not a point guard. And then the Pelicans, CJ McCollum's not really a point guard, and even without him, like Jordan Hawkins was like their
right, or like Herb
guard.
Jones plays point guard.
Right.
Time. Yeah.
Who plays point guard for San Antonio tonight? Jeremy Sochan. Like, it's just like so many teams have went away from it. So like the Wolves don't have a backup, and I agree that's a problem. But like it's a problem everybody has right now.
That's a good point. I didn't really think about it like that. I'm gonna play the clip here of I think Britt was the one who asked Finch about kind of the backup point guard dynamic right now.
Given J-Mac's injury and not a sure, point guard necessarily units, are you thinking differently about Kyle in terms of just needing to, knowing you need him to settle down that second unit more now, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Kyle's just really good with the ball in his hands. I mean, he's a point guard. He's a point guard. He thinks the game like a point guard. He grew up playing point guard. And for him to be the best version of himself, you got to have the ball in his hands, and that's where we love it. And he creates a lot of great offense. So, as it relates to our point guard situation, he's a natural option. Nikhil's been really good there too. I think one thing we're learning is I think Shake's probably a little better off the ball and getting him involved in stuff off the ball, where he can really trigger his aggressiveness. And Nikhil's been really good, like in running our stuff out there, and in a different way that Mike does, and in a different way that Kyle does. So I like that. We have like 3 different guards who kind of all lean into different parts of our offense. So
that is the glass half full idea of it, right? Is like, I guess what I'm hyper focusing on is you don't have another Mike Conley, right? That's why I'm saying it's a negative thing. And Finch is like, I'm cool with it being these different versions of initiating action, right? And like he doesn't bring up Ant in there too, but Ant, to my eye or mind of point guard, lead playmaker, whatever, he's done that a ton as well. I guess what I'm saying is I expected to get more out of Shake or Nikhil in the more like traditional backup point guard sort of way, and that might come. I think Shake is a lot of his is when we talk about the confidence of the group and the continuity of the group. Like he doesn't appear to be that way. He also wasn't here last season. He doesn't have any of the continuity or familiarity with the system. So this one might change over time. And we go, we look up the numbers in 20 games. We're like, actually the net rating is positive when Mike Conley is off the floor. It just doesn't feel like that to me right now.
Yeah. And, I agree with you, but I don't think Shake Milton's that type of player either. It's to me like he's the type of playmaker in that he will catch the ball and attack, and then can score or find somebody off of it. Like that is like a playmaker, but maybe not a floor general. And I do think those are different. And I would say like I totally agree with leaning into the Kyle Anderson thing, because those 3 teams I mentioned, like the Pelicans, the Spurs, Boston, like I think Kyle Anderson's more of a floor general than anybody they play at point guard. So like, and he really is like, you've kind of compared him to like he plays like Jokic in some way, where like Denver doesn't need. They have Jamal Murray. It's great when he's out there. Like when he's out, like
I don't want to
right
tweet
now.
that because all the Denver guys will just
Yeah.
harass me. But I think that it is.
But you can run. It's very easy to run Anderson centric offense, and it doesn't mean he's taking any shots. You know, but like it's generally generating something good, which is kind of the point of a point guard. Kyle does do it maybe even more effectively from the high post than dribbling the ball up the court. But it's the same idea as like what Jokic does, you know, like, and so if you can do that with your second unit, then that's better offense than a lot of teams are going to be able to generate from their second unit.
Yeah. All right. So that's our list of, we didn't even have any overlap.
We did not.
We didn't see it. It was good by me.
That's right.
Let's kind of talk about the San Antonio matchup here quickly. We'll hit on some prize picks specific to that matchup. I don't know. I just think I asked Rudy about playing Victor, so I'm just gonna, I don't really have any thoughts on this. I just thought it was a fun clip.
You got San Antonio on Friday. You got a chance to watch Victor?
A little bit here and there. But yeah, of course. You know, I mean, I'm kind of like a proud dad when I watch him play. You know, but yeah, really happy for him. You know, he's put the work, so he's dedicated. Like I've probably never seen a 19-year-old dedicated. So, you know, he's been doing some incredible things, and it's gonna be fun to be able to face each other, and then just go out there, try to get a win.
That is the thing, right, Chase? Is like Rudy loves dedication.
Yeah.
Right. Like that is his thing, and even after the Boston game, we asked him about Ant and what Ant was able to do, and he has 38 and all the big shot making, and he's like, the commitment to defense was what impressed me most there in that game, and guarding Tatum. Like Victor really, that's what stands out to me when I watch Victor, or even just interviews and stuff like that, is seemingly super mature for a 19-year-old and focused on a lot of the things that many 19-year-olds when they come to the league aren't. And I feel like it's similar to Rudy. I don't know. I don't know what Rudy was like at 20 or whatever when he came over, but I would assume mentally there was some similarities there. That's what impresses me. Honestly, it's what impresses me about Gobert. I think that's why Gobert is such a good defender, is he's so freaking committed to it, and I think Victor can and will be as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge base for like the Spurs, because it's one thing to have somebody as long and skilled and everything as Victor Wembanyama, but he's clearly going to be the face of that organization. And when he is like so committed and dedicated to improvement and just like the team aspects of basketball, like that will seep into everywhere else. That will set the tone for everything else. And the way that Rudy has kind of helped do that with Minnesota, and you see like that's how you become a consistently good team. So like I think that's probably should be one of the more encouraging things, is to hear those words if you're like Spurs fan, because it is the opposite of how they look right now. But I think it's where they will go. But I totally agree with you. Like Rudy's constant, even when they, beginning of last year, he just talks about habits. And we hear the coaching staff talk about habits. Like those are the things that matter. They're finally like seem to be breaking some bad ones or really committing themselves to good ones. And you see that wins do follow.
Right.
And that's huge. And that's huge. So if Victor Wembanyama has that as well, like that's really good for the Spurs moving forward.
Yeah. It's the dream thing to have in one of your star players as a coach, right?
Yes.
And Finch obviously appreciates that in Rudy, and obviously Pop will in Victor. Let's look here. Prize Pick sponsor of the show. Promo code Dane for a $100 sign up bonus. I'm just looking here at the over unders set for Wolves Spurs tonight. The two that pop to me are Jaden 10.5 points here, and Rudy 13.5 points. I feel like I want to say both. Like one, San Antonio, they have Wembanyama, but they are not a good defensive team as far this season. I think Jaden's gonna get double. It's 10.5. Like I think Jaden's gonna get double-digit points in this game. I think they'll actually Wembanyama might guard him. That I could see that kind of like Porzingis did, but regardless, it is a team that you can take advantage of. Pop has said repeatedly they're learning.
You think Wembanyama might cover
Jaden?
Who do you think? guards Cat then? Because like the San Antonio Wings, Sochan probably.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing. But sometimes he is guarding the point guard. Like they kind of do the
Yeah.
Canadian thing. It's hard. I was watching their last. They played the Knicks, and I was looking like
non-competitive loss. Just
yes,
so
right.
knows. They play a lot of those.
So when I watched the first half of the Spurs Knicks game, and Wemby guarded RJ Barrett. That was his primary matchup in that one, and they put Collins on Mitchell Robinson, Zach Collins on Robinson. So I'd assume he guards Gobert. And then like Vassell didn't start in that game. Maybe you put Vassell on Ant. You put Keldon Johnson on Conley, and then Sohan on Cat. I don't know. That's kind of. I actually just really I like this every time. Like when I watch, I'm like how it. It's a really interesting thing to me every game.
Because it is a puzzle with the Wolves lineup. It's a puzzle.
It's a puzzle. And I like puzzles. I like those type of puzzles. So whatever it is, I mean, it'll be different matchups at different times. I'm not saying Wemby will never be guarding Rudy, but I guess that's probably it. Won't be their primary. I don't think Wemby or Gobert will be Wemby's primary defensive matchup in this game, which probably most people think will happen because they're both the two freakishly tall players out on the floor. But that's just they're really playing Wemby as like a 3 this year. It reminds me most of like Bull when he would play. They always played like 1 or 2 bigs next to him too. That's at least where it's starting with Victor. And we just saw. I thought it was a great strategy by Boston to put KP on McDaniels and do Drew Holiday on Cat and all that. Like, I think these are going to be the smart things that we see teams do against them. Any of these other prize picks stand out to you?
Yeah, I agreed with you on like Rudy Points was kind of the one I was looking at. I just think physically, like he'll have a huge advantage down low, and Minnesota, when it runs good offense, can take advantage of that. And they've seemingly been a little bit more aware of it, especially in these last few games. Like even in the start of the year when they were winning, I was like, I feel like they're leaving some stuff on the table with Gobert. I think they've taken more advantage of that. Him getting to the line a bunch is kind of a good example of that. I think just of getting the mismatch, and he's able to take advantage. But just going away from that, Rudy at blocks is 1.5, and he's going over that a lot.
Interesting.
And I do think part of that is you sit there, and if you're from the outside, you're like, well, he'll probably guard Wemby, and they won't down low as much. It's like, no, that's not really. I mean, even if they somehow matched him up on Wemby, they invert things so often. Like whatever they do, they made a key point to like, how do we change things? So yes, Rudy can guard the perimeter, but we still want him to be more around the paint. Like they will invert coverages to do that because they know what an advantage it is to their defense. Not to say that he won't end up on Wemby on the perimeter at points, but Rudy will be in positions, I think, to block shots down low. He's consistently going over 1.5. I think
like
that's
that.
a really good number for him.
I mean, Rudy's pursuit has been so good.
Right.
And
he can get there from anywhere. He really can get there from anywhere right now.
Yeah. And then it's just ultimately, is it a heavy contest or is it a block?
Right.
The heavy contests are, I mean, he has 10 of those a game, and how many of those do you convert to blocks? Yeah, I think we should get to the point where we're expecting this isn't last year anymore. This is different Rudy. Would he average like 1.5 blocks last year? Like that number is going to be higher this season. He's going to average more blocks per game this year. He's going to average more rebounds per game this year. Like those. So any of these numbers you're seeing out there that are going off of Rudy Gobert averages from a season ago, as we often talk about, they do. Rudy just kind of like across the board right now, while the numbers are still hanging on last season averages, there's probably value there. So prizepicks.com or the prizepicks app, promo code Dane for a $100 sign-up bonus if you want to mess around with some of this NBA stuff. Obviously, NFL, your fantasy team's out of it, whatever. Get something to watch more intently a player on Sunday. So prizepicks.com or the prizepicks app, promo code Dane. All right, Jace, I am at the point against like the bad opponents thing. I'm expecting them to come out soft and slow. I really am not. I didn't like the line was only 9 or whatever against the Pels, and I kind of expected them to do that. There is going to be a time where they don't take a team that is significantly worse than them seriously. I'm at the point where I'm already starting to feel better about that. Do you disagree with that?
I agree with that. I would say not all bad teams are created equal. Like I very much think like the Pelicans, when their numbers are down, like they still have Valanciunas out there, still kind of a slow guy where you're going to like post ups and whatnot. Brandon Ingram is an ultimate isolation player. He is somebody who's only going to feel validated to do that more and more when they have guys out. And so Minnesota is great against isolation. I am way more interested and intrigued to how they play tonight against a team that has a bunch of younger athletes that maybe will be willing to push it more and get up and down.
That's a good point.
A bad team that wants to run versus a bad team that is going to play isolation with few options around those isolation players. Like I think the Pelicans are born to be beaten when they are down a bunch of guys. Like it's just not the same to me as like when you get a bunch of 22-year-olds who are going to run up and down the court. I think that's Minnesota's biggest test. So I'd be much more impressed with a win tonight than a win against the Pelicans, because heading into that game, I was like, I don't see a way they'd lose that. I remember I tweeted when they were up 28 at halftime, like, yeah, that's great. They play such good defense. They're up 28 instead of 15, and the game is over. And people are like, the game is not over. Right. The Pelicans, by midway through the second quarter, had stopped running. Like, stopped running back on defense. It was just jogs. It was like, we lost, like.
Larry Nance just looked like he was going through it. He was like, why am I out here right now?
Right, 100%. Like, you can tell when a team has some fight in it. They didn't have any. They, like I said, like Brandon Ingram is like, happy birthday to me. I just get to just dribble around and shoot, that's not going to beat Minnesota ever. So yeah, I'm much more intrigued by tonight. I also have more faith that they will bring it versus everybody. But this is a much stiffer test to me in regards to that, because this is not a good Spurs team, but they have a bunch of athletes. And those are the types of teams that gave Minnesota fits last season.
Right. No, I agree with that. We will see what happens Friday night against the Spurs. Next pot, we won't be doing a pod after that game. Chris and I will talk on Monday morning after the Wolves' first of two games against the Golden State Warriors. In the meantime, like Jay said, he's going to have a piece coming out from his Conley Corner thing, which I think is just super cool. Jace and Mike are getting together to talk. What is it, bi-weekly?
Yeah. Yep. Just
like an extended conversation where the two of the sweet, like Mike's kind of weighing in on what the themes of that are. And it's been a great piece. I think it's become like a staple piece of Wolves writing that's coming out often here. So check that out. Conley Corner. Jace, I'm sure we'll tweet that out. It'll be in the Sunday paper or up online sometime this weekend.
Probably. Yeah. Right.
Before that, those are great. Mike is obviously a great quote and a real quote, which is the best kind of great quote. So look for that over at the Pioneer Press. Follow Jace on Twitter at Jace Frederick. I'm Dane at DaneMooreMBA. I will talk to you on Monday. Until then, peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.